To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land.
Let's take a walk with Walt down to Disneyland. I can hear those dapper dames and the marching band. When nighttime falls on Main Street, there's magic, so they say. So come take a walk with Walt round Main Street, USA.
Welcome to a Walk with Walt podcast, where we always take the road less traveled when it comes to Walt Disney and everything Disney. Our other hosts, Mindy Lou Mouse Mindy.
All the above.
She is the one who put together a Walk with Walt, and it's great to see you. Thank you. Thank you for making me a part of this.
It's so fun. Carrie, we're just having a blast. I just love doing these shows with you and the amazing people we get to meet. And I'm over here fangirling a bit. So I can't wait for our walkers to hear who we have on.
So continuing on our path that we follow here, I'm so incredibly excited. If I was writing a book about Carrie, it would say, Carrie woke up with a sense of intensity and excitement. He sat up bolt right in bed, swung his legs over the side, snapped his fingers, and said, "It's showtime." That's how I felt this morning when I got up, because I'm so excited about today's guest, Disney artist Jerrod Maruyama. Jerrod is perhaps Disney's most renowned artist. His art and merchandise is in every Disney theme park. You find it in a lot of Disney stores and DCA stores. Everywhere you go at Disneyland, you see Jerrod's work. You see the kids and the adults with the balloons that he designed. His works are prominently displayed at Wonderground. And he has other clients. Pixar is a client. He illustrates children's books. Just go on Amazon. I lost count after 26 different Jerrod illustrations of books. He even has his own line of products, which we will also talk about that. The best way I could describe Jerrod's work is that it makes you smile. You can't help but smile when you see Jerrod's art. So Jerrod, thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's a very glowing introduction. That's very generous. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And I will say, I am here to talk about the latest food for Disneyland.
That's
if
so
you know
good,
me,
Jerrod.
yeah.
I've known Jerrod for maybe about 6-7 years or so.
Wow.
It's not that we see each other a lot, maybe a couple times a year. And we didn't see each other from March 2020 until June 2021. But each time I see Jerrod, something happens. Something crazy happens. Something wild, impossible happens. Things that have changed my life, changed the trajectory of my life. Like life-altering, impossible things that can't happen. My life, every time I meet with Jerrod, my life is sent on a different trajectory. I'm not kidding you. And the legends grow each year. Like when we and other people talk about what actually happened, it gets added to. So I don't know why we just can't have a moment, just have coffee and just chat. But this is awesome, and it's going to be one of the rare times we get to talk without well-wishers coming up to say hello to you. Because
And you as well.
If you've never met Jerrod, he's one of the nicest guys in the world, and he's so accessible to his fans. They love seeing him. But it's time, like I said, to unabashedly promote you. So tell us what you're up to. Where can people see you in person? What's going on?
Oh, see me in person. That's interesting. So depending on when this airs, I'll be at the Epcot International Festival of the Arts, where they plunk us down in a chair for 2 hours a day, and we sign autographs and meet people and talk to guests. Very different world out there in Florida than it is here in Anaheim. So you can find me there. I'm always working on Disney projects, which is great. Like you said, the books keep me busy pretty much year round. We are scheduled on those out through next year. So that's an ongoing thing. Other than that, it's always working on items for Wonderground or for next year's projects. Usually we start so far in advance. Usually can't talk about a whole lot of stuff until it happens. And I'm sort of superstitious about that. I don't like to pre-announce stuff until I see it, because things can change quickly. I have a new line of Olumal character that I don't know if you're familiar with him. The Duffy.
Jerrod, it's character. Like my next group of questions to ask.
Okay.
So you could talk about Olumal right now.
Okay, so character in the Duffy and Friends line of Friends, bigger in Asia than here. I don't know that we even have much Duffy presence here at all, but did a line for Disney, and it's at the Alani Resort, and it's at the Polynesian Village Resort in Orlando, so you can get that, on the coaster. I don't think it's here on the West Coast, but it's a big line of merchandise. My first Spirit jersey is in that line too. Yeah.
So, you have a Spirit jersey?
I have a Spirit jersey, so I'm done. That's it. I've reached pinnacle Disney merchandise now. Yeah.
Hold the phone, jump back. Where can I? Okay, so I have to say, I know I'm going to interject here, but whenever I see your work, I can just tell it's you. So, and I buy a lot of it. So I'm fangirling over here, but I really do. So, see what I mean? I have the Dooney and Burke. Yeah. It's in my hands, walkers. I have the blue Dooney and Burke that Jerrod designed. And when I see these graphics, I live in a 1950s world. I was born in the wrong era. My house is all 1950s. Yeah. I have a pink kitchen with tiled black and white checkered flooring.
Nice.
So this just fits right in.
Perfect. That's exactly, I love that style. I think it's huge, especially with Disney fans. It's a very common sort of era for everyone to love. So anytime I can work that into my stuff, I definitely do.
So I need to find this jersey you're speaking of.
Yeah, it's a bit more tropical than the other stuff, but yeah, they have it in Florida. I haven't seen it online or anything yet, so I think you might have to be either at one of them, but I'm going there, so maybe you can put in an order with me.
She'll go. She'll just make a trip. She'll just make a trip to go. Hey, Jerrod, Mindy is my queen of Disney bounding. And she looks fabulous in what she wears.
I bet.
She looks fabulous.
I love the Disney bounding. I love that approach to it. That it's not a costume, It's
so I also wear So I also wear retro clothing. So I'll wear my petticoat and my skirts and just go 50s. Like I'm all about the 50s look.
So are you big on Dapper Day then? I would imagine.
Oh, huge. Yeah. I cannot go
please.
Exactly.
So I sell 50s clothing. That's what I do for a living. Right. Okay. And I sell interior design, vintage floor or home and decor. And it's all 1950s stuff. So yeah, I'm all about it.
Let's go back to Olumal.
Okay.
I see it on your Instagram page. And by the way, if you don't follow Jerrod, it's so much fun. It'll brighten your day. Just enter Jerrod Maruyama and you will find it.
Yep.
Now, what is actually Olumal? What type of character is it?
So Olumal's a little turtle. He's a sea turtle. So Duffy was the bear that everybody knew. We had Duffy at the beginning at DCA for a while. And then they just keep adding friends to his little group. So Olumal was one of those. And I think it originates in Hong Kong, I want to say. But I don't know for sure. I know he's very prominent at the Alani Resort.
So people going to Alani are going to say, oh my gosh, Olumal.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Really? Okay.
Well, I think for the people from the Asian countries know, though. I don't think here, unless you're very much into it, you wouldn't, you might not recognize them.
So what are some of the products with Olumal on it?
They kind of go through there's a basic lineup of stuff they always do. There's actually an ornament, there's a beach towel, the Spirit jersey, there's a tumbler, there's a Loungefly backpack, and there's a luggage tag and things like that, some patches and a plush actually, which is great.
So do they tell you draw art for a Loungefly bag, draw art for an ornament, a mug, or how does it work? How does the process work?
So usually with me, and I'm a contractor, so I'm not a Disney employee, so that it's not like I'm working directly with these people all throughout the day. So usually what they do is they come and they say we want to do a line based on this character or this movie or villains or something like that, and then I'll create artwork. We'll go back and forth a lot on the artwork, but they take it and then they do appropriate merchandise after the fact. So when I'm doing the artwork, I have no idea what this is going to go on. They just kind of want your vision, your take on this, and then they have people that are, well versed in merchandise and what works and latest trends, and they go and then they turn these things into product. And I'm more than happy to let them do that because I
Got it.
don't know nearly enough about that.
So you give them the elements and
Yep.
they put it together.
Right.
And then you don't even know until you see the finished product what it's going to look like.
It depends. It's very different. Like Disney's so massive. It just depends on who you're working with specifically on a project. So sometimes they will contact me and say, here's what we're working on, or if I have to adjust the art to fit a space or something. But a lot of times it's just when we show up to an event or if someone posts it online and we see it on the shelf, that's the first time we're seeing it a lot of times.
Now Jerrod, you said that it's different in Florida than Disneyland. What do you mean?
So when we go out there for appearances and stuff like it's a whole different group, obviously, because it's Orlando, it's Disney World. So it's just a very different type of atmosphere. Like with Disneyland, you get so many locals. So much of the crowd at Disneyland is locals and pass holders and, people who can come to the park all the time. Over in Florida, it's much more vacationing people and people from out of the country even. So they're not coming usually for an art festival or to see you. They just happen to be there when you're there. So it's a very, oftentimes they don't know who you are and you're just sort of explaining to them why you're there and what you do and what this festival is. And it's a lot more sort of educating about the process and things like that. Whereas with Disneyland, we get people who come because you're there and they come to all the events. The ones we get in Florida the ones that are repeat customers tend to be cast members. And, in Florida, that's a huge population of people, but they're the ones that live close by. They're very, in touch with everything happening with Disney and familiar with the work. So it's mostly those people that come for these events where you have to sort of line up. So just a very different crowd when you go there. So you're standing at your little booth and it's not crowded because we're there for quite a bit. So, some people are there to see you and other people are there asking you, where are the bathrooms? What time does the park close? And tell me about this other artist, And so
whoops.
I'm explaining, they're like, well, how does she paint that? I'm like, oh, that's a good question. I don't know,
That's
so,
not mine.
Yeah. So then
Well,
you become very cast member, and talking to the guests like that.
That's so great because I agree. Going to Disneyland so often and how close I am, I'm not super close, not as close as you, but I do go often.
Now, Jerrod, you describe, or I don't know if you describe this, but the art style, kawaii.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you follow. But can you explain what it is to people?
I think so. Kawaii, I mean, it's basically just like saying cute. It's like the Japanese word for cute. With Japanese terms, there's a lot of nuance and it can be used in a lot of different ways. But shorthand is that it's cute. To me, I think it's a very like a Hello Kitty approach to cute, as opposed to say the American form of cute, which tends to be sort of bigger eyes and like a baby look to it. The Japanese one tends to have this very specific form of cute that they do very well. And so that's the only like a distinction I think I make between saying something is cute or kawaii.
Was Hello Kitty the harbinger of kawaii?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, it's Japanese have been very good about doing cute stuff, and they're very open to characters in general, not just like as a kid's thing or a cereal box thing. They're everywhere there. So they have been doing it for a lot longer. But I think that was the first one that kind of came to America as merchandise, and it was something that caught on here just as much as it was in Japan. Not just as much more popular in Japan, but it has a huge following here.
Now, how were you drawn to this? I mean, no pun intended. No pun intended. Wait a second.
Very good. Yeah.
But how?
I don't know. I guess it's just in my genes being Japanese. Because it was something when we were little that I really liked. The thing about Hello Kitty was all the merchandise was sort of shrunk down versions of everyday objects. They weren't unusual products. It was just like, a stapler that was tiny and a little notepad. And I just thought that was adorable. I still like miniature things. So that, plus it's a cartoon character. It's a very natural fit for me. I think it was just what I liked in general. So I just kind of kept with it. But it took me a while to come back to it as sort of drawing it in my style.
Whenever I talk to people about you, I say your name and it doesn't ring a bell, but I'll say, his art is the kingdom of cute.
Yeah.
Hipster Mickey and Minnie.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, of course
Yeah.
we know who that is. And we certainly will get to that later. But yeah, like Mindy said, your art is recognizable. As a matter of fact, too recognizable at Disney. Sometimes I have to ask you, I'll send you a picture and I'll say, is this yours? Because people mimic your style.
Yeah, when we first started, I was kind of one of the few people that were doing that, and it was great because Wonderground let us do such different things. But I think it's just sort of taken. Not that I started it, but we're just seeing so much of it now that I do get that a lot too, where people ask me, "Is this yours?" And even at signings, people will bring up stuff that's not mine, and I feel so bad because they bought it thinking that it's mine. And
really?
So I had to tell them like, "Oh, this isn't mine, or this is somebody else's," or. And it's funny, sometimes they don't even care. They just want me to sign the thing. So
You're like, it's cute.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have the whole entire kitchen set like that.
Oh, you do?
Designed,
Thank you.
All
Thank
of
you.
it. I brought a big old, we went to Disney World for 3 weeks last year and stayed at the Saratoga Springs Resort.
Oh, nice.
In the 2-bedroom villa. I got a little spoiled in there.
Wow.
But I came back with a haul. Let me tell
That's
you.
great.
It took one suitcase and 90% of it was all yours. I went to the
awesome.
kitchen section and bought it all up.
Thank you. That was such a fun line to work on. And
It
to see it across
was.
so many projects. I get a little tired of just prints and postcards all the time. I love seeing things that have a practical use to them.
Oh, they're in my kitchen.
I was thrilled to have that line out there in the world.
Could there be some counterfeit Jerrod art out there that people are pawning off as real and then they ask you to sign it?
Yes, it's
Ooh.
called
Should we-
Etsy. There's a lot of that on Etsy, and what I hate about it is Etsy's great. I love Etsy, and there are so many great people working on Etsy. But then there is a faction, like everything, of people who just sort of take stuff and resell it, or copy it, and and it's not great stuff. And I think most people are good at recognizing that now, but it does there's a blurry line in there where you can't quite tell. So, but yes, that's usually where I find it, is that either it's stickers or postcards. A lot of fabric. People they'll take your art offline and make fabric of it. And, it's the copyright belongs to Disney. So there's not much I can do personally. I can report it to Disney and say, this is what's happening. But yeah, you'll find a lot of that stuff online. And people always say, oh, I found it online. I didn't know it belonged to somebody. I'm like, yeah.
Right. So when they do that, does Disney, not to interject, but do they go after them and like try to remove that item for you?
Sometimes, it's a weird topic, but the best thing you can do sometimes is sick the fans on them, because if I say it, they say like, well, how can you prove that this is yours? And they get kind of defensive. But if you talk to someone and they say, go attack these things and say
Your
like, I'm not gonna purchase this because this is stolen art, that usually gets movement, which is sad. That's not a great approach to anything, but I think that's usually, in this day of social media, right, that's usually what moves things to happen. So it's unfortunate, but it happens. But we can't possibly keep up with all of it. It's such a small fraction that we can even address.
Doesn't Disney encourage fan art to some level? Because you see so much of it at the park.
There's
if you're not
fan
selling
art,
it, I guess.
If you're not selling it, that's the difference.
Okay,
and that's what I always tell people, like, do your fan art, great, post it, but don't sell it. Just don't sell it. Yeah.
Got it. I say we get the FBI involved.
I think they are.
In these forgeries.
Yeah.
Sick them.
Yes.
Let's go back to the beginning. That's the very beginning. So you are from San Jose, correct?
That's right. Yeah, born and raised in San Jose.
And when did you first get interested in art?
I think, I think most kids draw when they're little, right? It's one of the early things, whether you're coloring or drawing. So I drew when I was very little, but it wasn't until much later, like in high school, after seeing The Little Mermaid, actually, that I decided to pursue art as a career. Because that is a big jump. I don't think any parents are thrilled when your kid says he's going to go into art as a major.
That's my daughter.
Yeah.
Art. Yep.
And even if they are encouraging it, you worry, and rightfully so. It's a difficult field to go. It's like if your kid said, "I'm going to be a professional athlete or an actor or a musician," so many unknowns and so many different
Well,
ways it
her
could go
professor
wrong.
said that. It was like, "Are you
Yeah.
sure you want to do this?" Because she's doing computer animation.
Hmm.
It's a very hard. She was like, "Oh, I could be a teacher in art," and that's more,
Yeah.
open.
Right.
But her heart is so set on computer animation. So, like you said, it's a
Yeah.
difficult thing to get into, though.
And that's great. You want them to do what they're passionate about, what they love, because that's what they're going to excel at. But you also want them to be careful and safe and financially secure and all that stuff. I think that everybody feels, but it's hard to convey that, and you don't want to squash that magic.
So, were your parents supportive of you?
My parents were pretty like aloof for as far as like Asian parents and stuff. They kind of let us do what we wanted to do. So there wasn't a pushback, but and on the other side, they weren't encouraging me to do something else either. So I was lucky in that way. They didn't help us either. It wasn't like they were saying, well, here's all these, ways to be better at art. They just kind of let us do our own thing. And I'm grateful for that.
Were you a child prodigy?
No, no,
So,
definitely,
so your
definitely not.
so your parents didn't stand with their arms around each other, saying, "Honey, look what we created here. Look at this."
One, they never stood with their arms around each other. Two, they never called each other honey. And three, no, they never said.
Oh,
I grew up in a sports family, so my older brother and younger sister played sports, and my dad was a big sports person. So everything, I mean, everybody knows with kids in sports, it consumes your whole life, right? Your entire summer is spent traveling around the country, or games and practices and talking about it. And so I was kind of left to do my own thing then, and so I'd just be drawing and things like that on my own. But the focus was on sports, and I was even forced to play sports a little bit as a kid until I could absolutely stop doing it. But that was more the emphasis. So it was kind of nice because I was distracted. There wasn't an emphasis on me to be better or to do this or do another version. I got to do it and find it on my own.
Yeah, Jerrod's a big sports fan. I went to 2 Laker games with him. I know how much he loves it. And as a matter of fact, both of those Laker games were life-changing events.
Yes.
Which I'm not going to get into. Back to the beginning. So you first got interested in art like toward high school, or that's when you decided this is what I want to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was seeing The Little Mermaid that said I want to be a part of it. So initially I thought I'd go into animation, but that didn't pan out.
So the Little Mermaid, were there any other artists that influenced you? Any other styles that you liked?
I was always a big fan of animation, so it always was sort of set up around a love of animation and characters and things like that. So, I grew up in a great time in the 80s of characters when you got Muppets and Disney and Looney Tunes, and just everything was sort of huge then. So it was very easy. So I always grew up looking at other characters, existing characters, and drawing those characters. So animation was sort of a perfect fit because that's all you do is you're drawing someone else's characters usually. So I was very much influenced by those artists. And back then there wasn't, without the internet, there wasn't as much awareness of these behind the scenes people with Disney and things. So you didn't quite know who these people were. That changed quickly. But at the time I would say I'm more influenced by specific properties and licenses than I was specific artists.
When did you develop a love for Disney? When did that come in?
Much like it was that Little Mermaid time, which is late. I did not. I mean, I think everybody grows up with Disney in your life because it's kind of the things. People will give you stuff. It's Disney because it's for kids, or films. They'll take you to see those films because they assume it's for kids. And it kind of was more so back then. Now animation is everybody, but back then it seemed a little bit more kid centric. But we didn't grow up like going to Disneyland or, we thought some of the Disney movies when we were really little were kind of boring. We preferred Saturday morning cartoons and things like that. So, you take a 7-year-old to see Lady and the Tramp, and we were just so bored by that. Great appreciation for it now, but at the time we were like, this is so boring. So it was more like Looney Tunes and things like that. But Disney hardcore. Once Little Mermaid, well, Roger Rabbit probably before that, and then The Little Mermaid, it just started a streak. And that was a fantastic time to be a Disney fan because you got Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King right in a row. And how could you not be a Disney fan?
has there ever been a Disney movie or any characters or anything that said, "Oh my God, this is different here"?
It's funny. I think for me, it's really Pixar, because the Disney at the time was really kind of emulating a more classic style. They weren't trying to be super different or inventive. I think they were trying to capture that old Disney magic with those films, and they did. But it's still a very traditional look to those films. So I think it wasn't until something like Pixar where I remember immediately seeing Toy Story and thinking like, well, this is it. This is the future of animation. It's going to look like this from now on. And it looked great at the time. It looks horrible now. But you could just tell. And the writing was different, and it was a contemporary film. It didn't take place in a princess time or something like that. And I just thought, oh gosh, this is it. This is the change that's going to take place. So I think that was the biggest stylistic change in my early era. Since then, obviously, we've seen so many different styles, and there's so much out there for people going into animation to look at and to study. But at the time, I think it was still, they were transitioning out of that classic Disney thing and experimenting a little more after that.
So nothing life-changing that says this is it, or this is what I want to model my life after, or my characters, or anything.
Yeah, I mean, Mermaid was, because Mermaid did bring it back in such a big way that, I remember going sort of reluctantly to see The Little Mermaid. I did not have high hopes for that film. I didn't care for Oliver and Company that much. But Mermaid, the storytelling and the music in Mermaid, I'm like, okay, this is Disney. This feels like great Disney. So that's when I decided that I would pursue this as a career. So that was my life-changing film. But Beauty and the Beast is probably my favorite film.
That's nothing ever will be like that. Yeah. Now, you went to San Jose State.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a acclaimed art school?
They had a very good illustration program, a very traditional old school illustration program. But I had gone there in a transitional period, for better or for worse. And so I did learn a lot of very traditional ways of drawing. It was a very hard course. It wasn't an easy course. But then not enough alumni were getting jobs in illustration, because illustration was just suffering at the time. And so they started doing an animation program right smack dab in the middle of the illustration program. It just became part of it. And so just when I was going to graduate, they added on this 2-year animation program that we had to take in order to graduate. So it bumped me out another year and a half of school just to go through this thing. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. And the main thing was that I learned that I hated doing animation. And so that just had me do illustration out of the still image as opposed to movement.
Was it always illustration for you, or did you ever consider graphic design, the business world?
I think it was always illustration for me. I wasn't against graphic design because that seemed to be the more stable field, that there were more opportunities and better pay and things like that. Illustration seemed very much a freelance thing. It was particularly hard to get a staff job as an illustrator. But I started out in the children's educational software field. So that was creating a lot of graphics and things like that for, kids programs of spelling and math and that kind of thing. And so it was a lot of just basic graphics, like count the apples, how many horses do you see on the farm, things like that. So there was a lot of mix of illustration and graphic design. So this is just at the beginning of internet stuff, when everything was going to sort of internet-based deployment. So there was kind of a mix in there. I think illustration and graphic design kind of mix quite a bit. Graphic designers will probably not like to hear that, but especially now, there's a lot of mix over of where your talents are, and usually everyone's sort of in the middle somewhere. So I wasn't against it. I just wanted to do, I think, children's books, I thought, was the main thing at the time. I didn't think of merchandise per se, but yeah, it was always illustration more so than graphic design. Yeah.
When did you decide you needed to learn the Mac or the iPad to draw on? When did that come into you?
This is so funny. This is aging me rapidly.
No.
So like I said, illustration at San Jose State was very traditional, but they were obviously aware of changes happening and the computer kind of emerging, and it was very young then. I think, when I started, Illustrator might have been just starting out, like early versions of it. I remember using the old Mac. We had a Mac growing up, and they had that Mac Draw or Mac Paint on there, very basic pixely based stuff, and I used that a lot, so I was somewhat comfortable using the computer and the mouse to kind of draw, but certainly not like what I do today, just because the tool itself wasn't quite there yet. We did have to take one digital illustration class in college, and I learned Adobe Illustrator, and I absolutely hated it. I thought it was so cold and difficult to use, and there's nothing intuitive about it. But it forced me to learn it. Right after, just before graduating, I had to do an internship, and that's all we did was create clip art using Adobe Illustrator, and that forced me to get fast on it, to know it, to, just to be able to understand the tools and sort of the strengths and weaknesses of the tool. Very different than Photoshop, which I think a lot more people are used to. But it wasn't until then, just at the end of college, that I got into it. And even after that, I didn't want to use that tool. I was familiar with it, but I thought it was such a cold, awful tool. Why do it this way? This is such a hard way to do it. I didn't understand the advantages of vector at that point. But that's when I got into it, and I wouldn't come back to it for quite a while until I was doing like freelance.
But it's Illustrator you use now, correctly, right?
That's all I use, and I use it like an old man. I use it like I did back in 1999.
I was going to ask you if you ever updated your software.
I was very reluctant to go to the new form of it, where you have to subscribe and pay a monthly fee as opposed to buying discs and things like that.
Discs, yeah.
Yeah, but still use a mouse, which people find just shocking and horrible. But I'm so fast on the mouse, it's hard to stop doing what you do and then go to a whole new tool. Like doing that midstream is so difficult. But I have to. Nothing ages you out of your field more than being reluctant to change and adjust to the current situation. So, yeah.
Isn't Illustrator now very intuitive? Much more than when you?
Yes, it is. If you learn it now with the way that they've done it, like with a stylus and all that, then yes, it's much more intuitive and I think easier to use. But to make that jump for me is very. It's like if you had to learn how to drive a new kind of car or something. You just be like, I'm good with the old car. The old car works just fine. Why do I need all these fancy things? So again, that ages you, grumpy old man, pretty quickly, but it's work. And so for me, it's more of a matter of speed, just being able to tear through this stuff as opposed to taking, a year to get back up to speed on a new tool. Again, lazy and old.
But you learned art with a pencil or drawing.
Yeah, like most people. I think you and even today, I know there are kids that are going to grow up learning on the iPad.
Right.
And I really hope that they have paper and pencil in there somewhere, because I think it's such a different feeling. But again, old man comments from an old man saying, go back and do the old way. But it's sad to not have that. It's a wonderful experience to draw on paper, and it'd be sad to not have that.
I worked with so many artists, and I found the ones that learned to draw by hand were much superior than there were people that have only drawn on the Mac, on the iPad, and it's a much superior form of art.
What was that for you, Carrie? Because I'm sure you were in your industry for such a long time. Was there a big dramatic shift for you when things started going more digital or computery, or was it more seamless for what you did?
That's a question that I could answer. I'd have to answer on many levels. So it was a quantum leap for the better. Right. Because we used to have to send artwork drawn and then with tissue overlays.
Right.
Where the colors go, and we'd have to mail it or UPS it. We didn't have overnight when I first started. But to come up with the digital art was amazing. But I couldn't grasp it at first. Like, am I seeing this? Is this? But once I did, and I worked with some incredible artists that were so far ahead of their time on the Macintosh that helped propel me into the 21st century. So
it's an interesting time, I think, because it's such a conceptual shift. So if you grow up and you're on iPad since you were 1, then there's no shift there, right? You're just changing
Right.
tools. But to go from this mindset of like, even
Yeah.
email was such a big, big
Well,
Oh,
look at
wow.
I'm assuming, Jerrod, that you and I are kind of the same age. So it's like we went from this era, we got to see both. Like
Mhm.
using these phones that
Yeah.
we got to see the rotary phones. We had
Yep.
pagers in high school. We
Yep.
did
Yep.
all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to shift over to this,
Yes.
high electronic that I can't keep up with. I just
Right.
yesterday I got the iPhone 14 Pro
Yeah.
and I'm blown away. Like, remember, you had to carry all 4 things around, your
Yep.
GPS, your camera. It's all built in, like, into one thing, and how fast everything has
Yes.
moved.
I mean, even within that, there has been eras of like, I remember we were
Yes.
so excited to be able to talk on the phone from your pocket, right? And walk around
Right?
with that. And then everyone started going to text. And I'm like, I don't understand why we're going to
I
text. Like,
know.
we can
Yeah.
talk on
We
the
jumped
phone.
backwards.
Yeah. Like, why are we going to spell all this out when we could just call? But now I text more than I'm horrified when I get a phone call now.
But I think more
Why aren't they texting?
Yeah, I think more people communicate that way,
Yeah,
especially kids. I have
absolutely.
a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, and that's
Yeah.
how they communicate. That's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I got a boyfriend. I just text him." It's
If
like,
I get a
"What?"
call, it's either work or someone's died.
I
And
know.
so
And if
yeah,
they call you
Yeah.
twice, then you know it's serious,
right,
right?
exactly, exactly.
One.
So, Jerrod, after you got out of school,
Mhm.
what did you do
Um,
upon
so
graduation?
so I did go into children's educational software pretty quickly, which
Okay.
was lucky. And like, I'm sure my parents were relieved that I found like a staff job somewhere, and was able to sort of support myself doing artwork.
I do love stories about your family. Okay. I do love
So I got lucky and I got to stay in there and I did well. I became an art director pretty quickly and that was great. But then there was a huge layoff. Our company was acquired by somebody else. And it was like one of those move to Arizona or you're laid off. And so I wasn't about to move to Arizona. So I was let go. But I was lucky to get that experience in right out of school. And that made a big difference. But then it kicked off my freelance career pretty early.
So you went right from that company to freelance?
So yeah, for the most part, because after that, I did stay in the industry, but I would do these sort of long-term contracts with people. I wouldn't be a staff person. They would bring me on for a project, which could be up to 2 years or something. It was a very long-term contract, but I was never. After that first job, I don't think I was. I was on staff for maybe one other job after that, and then went freelance permanently after that. But it's a slow, long process of building up clients and not making a lot of money and doing some of the worst jobs you've ever done in your life just to make money and have that money coming in. It wasn't like an overnight thing. It did take a long time, and I was very fortunate to be able to do that.
What was your first job? Do you remember what was the first thing you ever sold that somebody paid you for your own work?
It's funny. Like I did things when I was little, and they'd
Sold
pay
them.
me in like gifts or food or something weird like that.
Do you remember
but,
what that was you did?
It was like someone, a teacher.
So you were a prodigy.
Yeah, yeah,
You were
exactly,
a prodigy.
exactly. A teacher had asked me to draw pictures, like caricatures of her friends, and had it was very funny. Like they were, I was in 5th grade, but she had me do this, and then she gave me like some gifts as a payment. But it got that in my head of this idea of drawing for other people, not like a fine artist who says like, oh, this is my vision and this is my art. It was very much like people pleasing through your art, and so I think that's why it was such a natural fit to be an illustrator, where you're following guidelines or someone else's request than just coming up with things on your own. So I work much better under those circumstances. I did I think outside of staff jobs that I had to do, like it was a lot of like character logos, things for like someone had like a dog grooming business and I had to draw like a cute dog in a bathtub or something like that, and I got paid. But all of these were when I had other jobs, because it just takes so long to get up that client list or reputation.
Your first clients are going to be the dog groomers, the florist.
Yes, little mom and pop shops. Yeah,
the individual State Farm office with Jake over there.
Yeah,
that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, and it's so much about luck, because one of the early jobs that I did, which was way too early because it was the only job I had, was doing sort of the point of sale displays for Hostess Easter, their Easter version of their snacks. And that was huge. Yeah.
That was huge.
That was out of the blue.
Hostess?
And it was a national campaign. And I don't know that it was the best thing I ever did, but it was certainly high profile at the time that I did it.
And they called you on the phone.
Yeah,
Probably.
they just found. So back then there was a lot more. Yeah, there was a lot more portfolio sites where you could put your sites up for these agencies to shop around. They still have it. It's a little. I think there's too many of them now, but back then it was a little more specialized. So I was lucky and got found through that.
So how'd you support yourself? What'd you live on?
That's a good question. So that's why I always had those long-term contracts going, and then I would just do a lot of these small gigs at night. I mean, there was a brief period after that job where I just took a retail job just to make money, so I could do both. So there's a lot of that early on, and you got to do it early on because it's harder as an adult or someone in your 40s to go back and take a retail job or work at Target while you're doing freelance than it is when you're younger. It's just a lot easier, and you just have less expenses when you're younger. I was renting a place. I wasn't, it wasn't a nice. I think we was in a house with like 8 other people, like you do when you're young, and that's sort of the time for it when you kind of have to hustle and make do. I waited tables for a while too. So just like any other job, I think like that, you have to sort of make do. If you really want to do this thing, that's why it's not an easy path, and it kind of breaks parents' hearts, I think, sometimes to see your kid struggling like that. But if you want
Did you work at Target?
I worked at the Warner Brothers Studios store for a long time during college because I hated the Disney store sweater. I didn't
look good, did it?
I was just pink and blue. I'm like, I don't want to wear that every day.
You look cool.
Warner Brothers was like a black polo. I'm like, I could do that. Yeah.
Mindy would have worn the pink and blue.
Oh, heck
I
yeah.
love it. I love it now. Yeah. I'm like, but at the time, Disney stores back then too, especially it was very Disney, and you really had to perform. And I don't know if I had that kind of energy to be so, retail's awful. It's terrible. It's very challenging. And I didn't know if I could bring that Disney magic every day to that. Obviously, Warner Brothers, we didn't have to do that much smiling.
Now comes the big question.
Okay.
The reason we're doing this show. The big question. How does one become a Disney artist? Like people ask me this all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Because I know you and I know other people you've introduced me to.
It's so interesting. I mean, it's a
Wait a second. Before we go on, we go on, we gotta do a great job here. Because I'm gonna tell people, listen to the podcast.
Okay. Wow. Now that changes everything. It could be a long answer and a short answer, but really,
give us a long.
Yeah. It's I get this question all the time, and you people come to you so hopeful and excited about it, and I wish I had a better answer for this, but I think as most people who do this for a living or work for Disney know, there is no great answer. And if someone gives you an answer that is sort of foolproof, you should be suspicious, because there are so many factors outside of it. I think the best advice I can give young people is you have to be good at what you do. I won't even say be a good artist. You have to be good at what you do. Figure out what it is you want to do that you're passionate about and do that well. Don't try to cater it towards Disney or any company specifically, because it just doesn't work that way. Now, I'm talking about what I do. If you're wanting to do animation, that's a whole other track, and you've had guests on here that can speak very well about what to do there. Like CalArts is a great way to go into animation, which I know they've mentioned on the show previously. And so you need to figure that out. But that starts with, what do you want to do? Do you want to be an illustrator? Do you want to do merchandise? Do you want to do animation? Do you want to do digital animation, traditional? So many questions to ask yourself first before you start worrying about where you're going to work. So if you like to draw cute stuff, then be really good at drawing cute stuff. Do all kinds of cute stuff. Do Disney fan art, do DreamWorks fan art, do your own characters, do everything. Be very good at that thing that you do and show it, share it, get it out there. You have to get noticed, which is sort of the second part of it. Be topical, because you want people to see this thing. It's not just so that you can be trendy and say like, oh, I'm doing what everybody's doing. You want people to notice that. all of us now are content people, and everyone's looking for content. So if you post something on National Dog Day, those people that don't draw are looking for something to post for National Dog Day. And then if they see yours, they're going to post it. It's a very basic way to say that, but that's what you want to do. You want to get your work in front of as many eyes as you possibly can. And that's how it's going to work. These places, I don't know, the places I've worked for so far aren't doing a lot of submission processes. They're not saying, send us your work. They're scouring the internet. They're looking for the trends and what people are looking at. And that's how they're going to kind of come across you, is if they find it. And all it takes is that one person to see it and go, hey, we should use that person. That's a very long, short answer. There are so many other things I would say to do in the meantime. None of it is foolproof. A lot of it comes down to luck and timing and where you are and what you do. And maybe you're not popular now, but maybe 5 years from now, your stuff's going to be popular. You just don't know, and you can't count on that. So I don't know. I'm happy to, if you guys want to drill down on that a little bit more, I could sort of expand on some of that, but that's kind of usually my advice. It's not great advice.
Yeah, there's got to be tens of thousands of artists
Yes.
that are great, but they don't get discovered. Or, same like with athletes. How many great athletes sit on the bench? If their coach would let them play, they would have been the next Tom Brady or something.
Yeah.
But they didn't get the chance. But in your experience,
Mm-hmm.
what was your connection with Disney? Were they scouring the internet? What happened?
Yeah. So the first big thing for me, which wasn't a job, was I had posted some cute Buzz and Woody art for Toys. This was when Toy Story 3 was coming out. So I think like 2010, I want to say. And the director of Toy Story 3, Lee Unkrich, reaches out to me and says, hey, I love this. Can we use this on shirts in the Pixar store? Absolutely. No. That direct. It's not like his people contacted me and said, let the director reaches out.
Director?
Yeah. And says that. And then, it's like, it's going through all this process at Pixar and everything like that. And so that's how it is nowadays with the internet. You just don't know who's going to see it, when they're going to see it, and who's going to feel compelled to reach out. But it is that easy and hard. So really, you just have to get it out there. If you're being shy about your work and not showing anybody, well, that's your fault, right? How is someone going to find you then? So yeah. So a lot of it's logic, but I get it. Yeah.
Let's drill down.
Sure. Yeah.
Where did you post it? Why did you post it? What were you doing with Pixar art?
So
where was it?
I posted it on Instagram and across my social media, and that's all I used
for fun. You did it for fun?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And I think that's what you kind of have to do. Now, some people would look at that and say, well, that's free work. But I'm like, okay, it's not like someone's hired you and said, we're not going to pay you, but please do this work. I would be against that. But you need to show your stuff. And if you're waiting around for Pixar to hire you for you to show your Pixar work, that makes no sense. That's not going to work. So yes, you got to do your stuff, show it, advertise yourself. You are a business. We are all a business. So you have to advertise yourself just as you would anything else. And then you fine tune. It's like a bakery. If you put out food that nobody liked, what's the point, right? You would sort of test things. You would try, you would play with the recipes until you found things that people liked. You don't say, well, those are my awful cookies and I'm standing by them. You'd say, okay, what are people buying? Because you're a business. You want to stay in business.
I do have bakery questions coming up too.
Good.
So it was Pixar was your first connection.
Pixar was my first thing that sort of brought me into attention.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then like Disney people reached out after that. So someone from Disney says, hey, I saw those shirts you did for Pixar. Can you do something like that for us with these characters? But yeah, you just want to get your stuff in the rotation, like seen. And then, so by doing that, Pixar gives you some kind of validation, right? They don't know you. They don't know what you've done before, but someone says, well, okay, it's okay for Pixar. It's okay for us. And that's kind of what you're looking for. But again, that doesn't guarantee anything. That just gives you the spark of notoriety for like 5 seconds, and you've got to use that as best as you can in that moment, because it's gone after that, and it could lead to absolutely nowhere.
And over the years, you've done a lot with Pixar. You still work with Pixar.
Yeah, every now and then. So like I do the books with Pixar. I've done stuff for the store and everything. I did the Alien remix that started as a Pixar store item and went globally. So again, you just never know when these things are going to unfold or how they're going to unfold or who sees it, and you gotta get your stuff out there.
What was your first breakthrough?
So Wonderground was huge. Wonderground was something that I was part of the first show that they did. So there wasn't something before that where I thought, "Ooh, I want to get into Wonderground." When I got the call to be in Wonderground, I thought it was like a scam or something. Because I didn't know what that was. I wasn't sure. I thought, yeah, exactly. So I took that very like, well, we'll see where this goes. But I was lucky enough to have pieces in that first show and have pieces that did very well and get a lot of attention, for better or for worse. And that kept me in Wonderground, and it was this great space to be able to sort of experiment and do things that Disney doesn't normally do. I think we see most of it now everywhere, but at the time it seemed very loose of Disney to let us do this stuff with their characters. I've said before, it was the only time I've worked with Disney where they've sent stuff back to me and said, this is too on model. We want to see more expression in this. We want to see more of you in this, less of the on model character work. So rare with Disney. Like I said, it's come a long way since then. But at the time I'm like, what? Less Disney-like? Like it was great. So I think that for me, and with the hipster Mickey stuff, that was a huge, it opened the doors to so many other opportunities for me. Yeah.
Let's talk about hipster Mickey.
Okay. Yeah, that was in the first group of stuff we did, and it just got the eyes of a lot of different people. So it wasn't the same sort of Disney fans. It reached a different audience, and an audience I think Disney is always trying to reach out to. So they got excited about. I was excited about it, and we did a lot of those at the time. Because it was people who wouldn't normally buy Disney stuff were buying the hipster Mickey stuff. And so I just got really lucky with that because it doesn't look like my other work. It's kind of on its own stylistically. So it was kind of a jokey thing, this sort of updated costume for Mickey and a sort of a different aloof look to him that we're not used to with him. So it just kind of took off.
So that was like a period where there were other artists making Mickey and Minnie look different. Different clothes, different environments, inner city looks,
urban, contemporary.
Urban, right.
Yeah. So with Wonderground, that first show, they used to do themes for the shows. So we would have, the very first show was, we had to do a Pixar piece and we had to do a Mickey piece. And it used to be that everyone had to do a Mickey piece, no matter what. You do something else, but you also had to do a Mickey piece. And then where they're really pushing either the style or the subject matter. And yeah, that was huge. So we really got to play with it a lot there.
Did you come up with hipster Minnie at the same time?
Hipster Mickey was first, and then this very second one we did was with the both of them. So whenever there's Mickey, there's usually Minnie too, and it seemed like an easy transition to have her in the same sort of style. So I think she was in there probably from the second piece we did.
Love that. So next week I'm actually going to visit my brother in Los Altos. So I've never been to the Disney Family Museum.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm excited about that. But there is the holy grail of Iwerk's first sketches.
Yeah.
And he sketched Minnie at the same time he did Mickey. They both came together. So that's why I asked you that question about hipster Mickey. I mean, it was such a great slacker look, did you have that idea brewing in your head or for a long time, or did it just?
No, not at all. So when we got the notes back to be like, push it more, like don't just draw Mickey doing a cute thing like we always see him doing, it really made me think about what they've done with Mickey over the years. And I think if you look back, and I've said this quite a bit before, like there's always a Mickey of the era, right? So they did Disco Mickey, there's a very distinct 80s Mickey, and then And so I wanted to just think about like what would be his costume for the 2000s. And that's just kind of what I came up with. And again, we all thought it was kind of funny when we did it, and we weren't going to use it initially because I had sent them a bunch of concepts, and that was just one of the concepts that was in the pile. And everyone kind of like, oh, that one's so funny, and but we weren't going to use it. It was the interns at the time that really pushed for that one to be used, to be released. And so I'm grateful to them for really standing by it, because that's really the group that it was sort of geared towards. So yeah, that's how we got him out there.
But back to hipster, Mickey and Minnie. I have in my notes here. It looks like that is your own distinct style. Like you said, it was a different style. Is this? Would you consider this kawaii?
No, I wouldn't. To me, it's more of a much more graphic design look to it. It's got the heavier outlines and flat color usually, and it did modify a little bit as we went through it. And I just started running out of things to do. That I am not a hipstery guy, so I had to research whenever we did clothing and things like that. I had to see what, and because like with hipster stuff, obviously it's built into the thing that this is going to change instantly, right? So the minute you draw it, it's already old fashioned. So you kind of had to stay on it. Not that it was anything crazy, but you just kind of had to keep an eye on it and look and see like what version of this could we do. The main thing was the glasses. I think putting the glasses on him was kind of the more trademark thing than it was about the specific clothes. But like, it was funny. People have tattoos of that on them. People dressed like that for Halloween. It was great. It was really exciting to see that happen. And so, I think that's exactly what the gallery was looking for, was something that would sort of define it and say like, oh, this is our message. We're not your dad's Mickey Mouse. And so, I just got very lucky. I'm grateful for that opportunity.
You have your printed artwork has a lot of different looks, but one of them is having the character in the center surrounded by a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The more you look at your art, the more you see. And people love that. People love that because you could stare at it over and over and over again. Now, looking at your art, was there a time as a kid or an adult that suddenly everything you looked at had a face?
That's interesting. Kind of like, so that's what I think I liked about Toy Story so much, is it's kind of how I thought about my toys, that these things had a life of their own and that they existed when you weren't in the room. So I think sort of that leads to anthropomorphizing everything. That it's not just it's a cute cup, it's a cute but that's so common with kids stuff. And so I think it's just this love of children's media that never goes away, and thinking of how everything could be turned into a character. Maybe not that everything is a character. It's funny, it's like there's a little like almost a rule for me when I'm doing these things that sometimes you have to break. But like when we were doing the food stuff for Disneyland, I had a hard time putting a face on a turkey leg. I thought
that's disgusting.
But they're like so cute.
It's cute, but I'm like, this is a piece of something else. And so on its own, it's fine. But when you start going back, philosophically, I'm like, that's kind of upsetting to think. And
the little Mickey ears on them.
Yeah,
so my favorite, because I'm obsessed with Disney churros. Like obsessed. It's the little the churro with the little Mickey hat on.
Yeah.
Did you do a turkey leg though?
I did do a turkey leg as part
of
the
turkey leg.
Okay.
Mindy, I have to admit though.
Go ahead.
I did my own and I laminated them and I made them all so they're all cut out.
Yeah.
I used them on Disney Cruise Line to put on my door. Door decoration. So they're now on my fridge. All your little cute. I just made them out of construction paper, but I'm obsessed.
Mindy, let's do an episode on the turkey legs.
There you go.
And then we'll show all the different versions, like what Jerrod did. Oh my gosh! And the controversy, is it even turkey? Oh my god, that'll be a great.
Or is it emu?
Like
ostrich leg.
Ostrich leg.
Like limu. Oh my gosh, they're eating limu. Mom. Okay, so when you go to the grocery store or the KFC, do you see a face? You get obsessed? Like I can't sleep? It's driving me nuts.
You know what it is? What I realized when I was doing this is the concept really comes from like the Muppets, I think, where you will see Muppet characters of everything.
Wow.
But even that, there's kind of a rule of when you would. I don't think you would see a chicken leg Muppet, but you would see vegetables or as Muppets or a cake or something like that. Yeah. So I don't know. It's funny how you kind of rationalize this thing. There is no logic to it, but you kind of think that through when you're doing it. Turkey leg is just too big of a Disney food item to not include it, so that's why it kind of broke the rule for that.
So funny.
Yeah, but
I have to look. I have to look that up.
Yeah.
Well, Jerrod, this has been amazing, which I knew it would be. I got a question for you though.
Yeah.
One more question.
Okay.
Let's say you had a chance to take a walk with Walt. Now, but let's say you're walking in the park with Walt.
Yeah.
And you're going underneath the berm and you're walking down Main Street and you take a lap around the park with Walt.
Yeah.
Taking it all in, taking the vibe in. What would you ask him? What would you want to talk about? What would you want him to say to you if you had a chance to take a walk with Walt?
This is hypothetical, so it's great. That would be crazy intimidating, wouldn't it? Just to walk with him. I think, and I thought about this question a little bit. I hate to be negative, but I would like to know what he wasn't happy with at the park, because I think we all, everything's celebrated now at the park, right? Absolutely everything. They move a garbage can and people say, well, I don't know if Walt would have wanted that garbage can moved. And so I would really be curious to hear what he wasn't happy with, not what he didn't like, because I wouldn't imagine there'd be anything that he outright didn't like, but just say like, we wanted to do this ride bigger and we wanted to do like this. And I'd be so curious to hear what either his alternative plans were or what his ultimate vision was, because I imagine that he would be thrilled about the technology that we use now for these rides, and that the constraints of budget and all that stuff would probably not be as concerning to him as it would be to other people. And like if he said, I wish we could do this or make a whole nother land over here, or I wouldn't restrict it to this, I'd be curious to hear and just his philosophy and how that philosophy probably evolved from when he first conceived of the park, and just how he would like to see this park evolve. Because there's nothing more frustrating than hearing so many people talk about what they think Walt would have wanted or what Walt would have done. But to be able to hear that from him and get it, I think people might be surprised at what a different approach it is. I know we've taken what he has said in the time that he was alive and made it sort of like a Bible that we live by, and without giving it sort of room to evolve, and that this is a different world than in 1955. 2023 Walt would probably be a very different person than back then. I'd be so curious to hear what his thoughts were to be. That would be given that, is he just coming into existence now and seeing what's been done since then, or was he involved in the process all the way up till now? But yeah, I think it would be a very, be interesting thing. As far as what I'd want to hear from him, I would hate to hear him talk about my art. I would hate to hear it. That would just, it'd be great if he loved it, but if he didn't, that'd be devastating, right? He wouldn't want to hear that. Not that he would say that. I don't think he would say that, but that would be great. Other than that, I don't know. It's so hypothetical for me. I wasn't even born when he was alive, so it's weird to think that people existed. You could be in the park and possibly see him. That'd be crazy. So.
Well, Jerrod, this has absolutely been awesome. I can't thank you enough for being so generous with your time. Mindy,
of course.
Thank you as well. But yeah, Jerrod, no, this has been overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming. And it's an honor, a privilege.
Well, thank you so much for having. I appreciate even the interest in having me on. This was great fun. It reminds me of when we do get together and talk with the group. Obviously, it's a very different conversation. But
all right, thanks everyone. Thank you, walkers, and thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this podcast today, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at our Walk with Walt podcast.